to definitely go over what we need to go over, and then also allow you to ask any questions that you may have. So thank you for joining us. You are joining us today because you are all subrecipients of our upcoming fiscal year CDBG funding for fiscal year 21-22. So congratulations. You all worked so hard to get here, going through the application process and the site visits and the council agenda items. And so congratulations. And first and foremost, thank you for everything that you continue to do for our community and the residents of Santa Maria. There's absolutely no way that we could do what we do and serve the residents in the capacities that they're being served if it wasn't for each and every single one of you and the work that you do and the work that your agencies do for our community. So thank you very much. I know our CDBG dollars are definitely do not cover everything that you do, but we hope that our CDBG dollars definitely allow you to better serve our community and assist you in what you do every day. So again, thank you. A few housekeeping things. As I mentioned, we will be recording this session and it will be posted to our special projects website. And that way you can always go back and look at it and review it if you have any questions about it. Of course, you're always more than welcome to contact us as well. But sometimes going back and reviewing some of the notes from today is incredibly helpful. And also the PowerPoint will be emailed to you, as well as some amazing handouts that Lauren from Zoom Grants provided us. And Lauren's joining us today from Zoom Grants, and she will be going over your part of what you're expected to do in Zoom Grants, and hopefully that will help make things a lot easier for you. Most of you are incredibly familiar with Zoom Grants and use it not just for us, but for other cities that you receive grant funding from, and that's wonderful. But of course, there's always room for a refresher and maybe a few tricks of the trade that might be able to assist you in doing all of this a lot easier. So before I go into the roll call, I would like to introduce our staff. So joining us today is Alicia. Alicia is our grant specialist, and you work with her a lot, as well as Tash. Tash is our account clerk aide, and if you could both want to wave so everyone can see you. All of our subrecipients deal with Alicia and Tash more than anyone else in this office, and they do a phenomenal job of making sure that you're aware of deadlines and any additional documentation that's needed. And they're just amazing, and I think that we can all agree that their ability to assist our agencies is just above and beyond, I think, what anybody can ever ask for. And also joining us is Lauren Silver. She's with Zoom Grants, and I'm going to be passing it over to her in a few minutes once we do roll call. So any questions so far before I proceed with roll call to make sure that I have everyone down who is going to be receiving funding this upcoming year? All right, no questions. There's also a chat box. If anything should come up, please feel free to enter your question or comment in the chat. And of course, you can also raise your hand. We'll be looking out for any raised hands. And if you have any questions throughout the process, please feel free to ask. Okay, so what I'm going to do for roll call is I'm going to go through and call the agency's name. And then if you could please unmute yourself and respond with your name to confirm your attendance. So I'm going to just go through alphabetical order. Alliance for Pharmaceutical Access. I see Emily, but I do not hear Emily. But I do see you, Emily. If you want to, Emily, if you just want to confirm in the chat, that's okay too, if for whatever reason you're having issues with your mic. I'm going to move on to Catholic Charities. Okay, I see Catholic Charities raised their hand. Child Abuse Listening Mediation.
Good morning, this is Tara Connolly here for CALM.
Fantastic. Thank you. City of Santa Maria Public Works Department, Eric Ridio. I see Eric.
Here.
Ryan Heath, City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Department. I see Ryan.
I'm here, thank you.
Oh, fantastic.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
City of Santa Maria Utilities Department, Sam Angulo.
Here.
Great. I also see Natalia, and I'm not sure, is it Alexandria joining us as well? Yes, I see Alexandra. Thank you. Community Partners, Community Action Partnership of San Luis Obispo County, Jim McNamara. I see Jim.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Community Partners in Caring.
Hello, everyone. This is
Hi,
Hiba calling.
Kim. Oh, hi, Hiba. I saw Kim as well.
Yes, I'm here
Right.
too. Good morning.
Great. Thank you both for joining us. Okay, Domestic Violence Solutions.
Good morning. It's Norman Colavincenzo for Domestic Violence Solutions.
Thank you for joining us. Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley.
Good morning, Edwin Weaver.
Hi, Edwin.
I think we have a couple other folks on too.
Great. Food Bank of Santa Barbara County.
Good morning, Lauren Cuero is here.
Hi, Lauren. Good Samaritan Shelter. Hector or Samuel? Okay. We will check back. Independent Living Resource Center.
Hi there, this is Alexa Martin with ILRC.
Hi, Alexa. Legal Aid Foundation of Santa Barbara County.
Hi, Tricia Geyer here.
Hi, Tricia. North County Rape Crisis Center.
Karen Powers is here from the center. Anne's
Great.
here
And I see Anne as well. I think she unmuted, but then I think I couldn't hear her, but I see you. I see you, Anne. Hi. Okay, Santa Maria Meals on Wheels, Colleen. There she is. I see her. And Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Okay. All right. Thank you all. I think the only one we're missing is Good Samaritan Shelter. We'll try and reach out to them. Did I miss anybody else? Any other agency that I missed? No? Okay, great. So moving on to our third slide. Most of you have participated in our subrecipient workshop in the past, but for those who are new to this process, we're going to be going over what to expect this upcoming fiscal year. So now that you're receiving the funding, council has approved the funding, you're good to go. What happens as of July 1st? So we're going to be going over the contract you'll be receiving, the exhibits that are associated with that contract, an explanation of what the exhibits A, B, and C are, and then as well as the request for payment and the process to submit that to us so that you can get paid, so that we can actually reimburse you for any costs associated with the program, service, or project that is tied to CDBG. So some of this stuff is going to be done via a Word document, and some of it's going to be done in Zoom grants. The things that you'll be doing in Zoom grants are the Exhibit B, as well as your request for payment. So that's where Lauren comes in, Lauren Silver from Zoom grants. She is going to be going over what to expect as far as your involvement in Zoom grants and what you'll need to be doing in there. And she's just going to show you how to maneuver through the site and most easily do what you need to do to ultimately get your money. So I'll pass it on to Lauren.
Hi, thank you for having me today so I can provide a quick tutorial on how to submit payment requests as well as reports in Zoom grants. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. If somebody can just give me some validation that you can see me scrolling over the Zoom grants logo here at the top of this document. This is actually,
Perfect.
yes, also the document that you'll be receiving from the City of Santa Maria as a step-by-step guide for submitting what we call invoices and reports within Zoom grants. So the very first thing that you'll need to do is, of course, log into your Zoom grants account. And to do that, you'll just go to zoomgrants.com/login, just as you have when you were logging in probably multiple times to fill out your application and get this far. If, for example, you've forgotten your password, click the Forgot Password link and we'll send you a password reminder email or to reset your email address. If you forget your user ID, which is your email address, whichever one you use to create your account, you can contact our tech support team who's there for a wide variety of issues that may come up by emailing them at questions@zoomgrants.com, and they can help you track down the correct user ID that's associated with your approved application. So in your account, once you're logged in, you'll see on your My Account homepage the Approved Applications folder right on the right. Note that you can only submit invoices or beneficiary reporting after your application has been officially approved and the administrator has also marked that as notified, which means you may have been notified via email or other means, but this necessary step in Zoom grants is what will allow you to see and access those post-award features that I just am going to go over. And if for some reason you don't see that application in your approved applications folder, you'll want to contact the administrator to make sure that the application status is set to notified. Once the application has been approved and notified, you would want to find the appropriate application in your approved applications folder. And make note that you may have, as she said, multiple applications that you're working on from the previous year or for other organizations which you've applied to through Zoom grants. So just make sure you're submitting the correct report or invoice for the correct application that you're working on. And also another important first step before you get started on this new year and this new program's submitting of invoices and reports, you may want to go in and add collaborators. So anyone other than the head applicant for your organization, the person who submitted this application on behalf of the organization, you may have other people who are working with you on this application. Certain people may be working on and signing contracts, one feature within Zoom Grants, but you'll be doing outside of Zoom Grants. You may have somebody who's working on the financial who is different than the person who's helping to collect beneficiary information and using the reporting features. So make sure that you go into your summary tab of your application first thing. Keep a couple swipes down to scroll down on your summary tab and make sure that you're adding the collaborators to the appropriate areas of the application that need to be assigned access. And those are those collaborators who will need to have access to the application, those who need to have access to the contract, the financial features within Zoom Grants, or reporting. So first, we're going to talk about how to submit an invoice. And within this handout that you'll be receiving, there's a helpful invoices tutorial video if you're a visual learner and want to watch that. Otherwise, there's pretty easy step-by-step instructions here about how to create a new invoice, as well as how to work on an old invoice that has already been created. So to start a new invoice, you can simply click on the program title in your My Account homepage, or click the Add Invoice button that is also right on your My Account homepage. When you do so, you're going to open up an invoice which looks like this. From your My Account homepage, you can see that you can click into the Request for Payment button or the Report button in order to access the different areas once you click into that program title to see what you want to do first. Is it to request a payment or to submit Exhibit B, which is your quarterly reports. If you're requesting a payment, you can create an invoice right here using this button, or as I said, you can use the shortcut button that's right on your My Account homepage to create a brand new invoice. If, for example, you've already created an invoice and you just need to go back and edit that initial invoice that was recreated, not create a new invoice, be sure that you, instead of clicking the Add Invoice button on your My Account homepage, that to go back and edit, you come back into this Request for Payment tab to click into the invoice number of that original invoice instead of accidentally creating multiple invoices and drafts that could be otherwise confusing. When you create that new invoice, it's going to open up a sample invoice that looks something like this. It's not, of course, tailored to your specific budget line items, which you entered under the funding uses and expenses under your application. And your final budget may still be in the works or being finalized. You'll see up at the top your organization's name and some basic information and contact information. You'll see some instructions here at the top that have been provided for you, as well as some requests for backup documentation that you'll need to upload as evidence of all of the costs that are included and associated with this invoice. You can upload as many different documents as you need to in order to suffice this backup documentation requirement. And it is a required document, meaning that you must have something uploaded here in order to submit that invoice, even if it's just a piece of paper that says something otherwise, or why you do not at that time have any backup documentation. This uploaded documents, each one must be less than 4 megabytes each, unless it's otherwise provided as a link to file from a Google Doc or some sort of cloud storage. But again, you can upload as many as you need to in order to suffice the backup documentation that you need for this invoice. You'll also want to assign your own internal invoice number if that's part of your own internal accounting process. If you leave this blank, Zoom Grants will automatically just assign one for you. Once you submit that invoice, it's important to note that if any changes need to be made, you need to contact the administrator because they would need to return that invoice to you for you to then or kick it back to you so that you can make any necessary edits and then resubmit again. If you're submitting an invoice, it's also important to note some other considerations that I'll cover at the end. But one thing that is important to note and that I always like to remind is that if you are, for example, have several different invoices open, to try and make sure that you close additional versions so that you're not perhaps working on multiple versions of one invoice. Next, I'm going to cover submitting a report. So as you're getting ready to, these are operating somewhat on separate but parallel tracks, the request for payment and the reporting process. Under the reporting process, you click into this Exhibit B or Report tab within your application. And the process is a little bit different, but very intuitive and easy to follow. You'll click into the respective report that is coming up due and start answering the questions within for each one of those quarterly reports. It's important to note that question number 2 is a branching question. So it's one of those choose your own adventure types of questions where based on your answer to this question, it's going to skip ahead to only those questions which apply based on your answer. So if you're reporting on public service activities versus a capital project that is general or minor home repair. And the questions will be different based on that. So it's important that you make sure you answer this one first and don't try and work from like the bottom up, and because then you'll be answering questions that you may not otherwise need to answer. As you're going through and answering these questions, you'll note that a total will always be provided under these table style questions. And those types of questions are very helpful because they over reporting periods in this quarterly reporting system. Zoom Grants will tally all of that reporting information under this Exhibit B Report Totals tab. So just be aware that there's nothing that you have to edit or do under this Exhibit B Report Totals tab. It's really for reference only, and it's a culmination of all of the reporting that you've done thus far on each individual report. So as you're seeing, for example, in question 2, why are there 4 columns? Because there's 4 different reporting periods. You'll also see here that you have 4 columns that represent any prior reports data that have been entered here, but this is actually entered on the previous report 1. You can't fill this in or out, but it's helpful for you as a reference tool and to see how many have been served thus far in terms of individuals or households by that CDBG activity. Up at the top, you'll also note still have access to the library for any information that you may need about how to submit that report. And if you have any other additional questions, you can also click on the Help button in the upper right-hand corner that will take you to Zoom Grants University. There's also some very helpful resources over here on the side that I want to point out. Again, a quick link to get to Zoom Grants University if you're the self-learner type and just want to search by keywords information that you're looking for. There's also a really quick way to contact the administrator here with a click of a button so that you can ask content-related questions about the invoice or the reporting requirements and that sort of thing. If you're having any kind of technical problems, again, questions such as can't remember your password, having trouble uploading a document for any reason, or anything else that's Zoom Grants related, you can ask Zoom Grants by clicking this button to send a request and they'll get back to you very quickly. Or, as I mentioned before, you can just simply email questions@zoomgrants.com and they'll be able to also get back to you. Some additional notes before I go. You'll want to know that the system's always going to make sure that you have answered all questions and uploaded those required documents both under the request for payment and reporting features. So if you're missing anything, the system's going to indicate to you what's missing in red. It'll be very obvious. And once you complete those missing fields, it's important that you click the refresh page button that's near the upper right-hand corner of your application, not just the refresh page in your browser. That doesn't quite do the trick. the refresh page button within the applicant's portal actually tells Zoom Grants to report back any previously saved information so that you can make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of that application before you then try to submit that application again. And as I mentioned before, if you do need to make any changes after submitting the invoice or report, you'll need to contact the administrator so that they can return it to you or open so that you can continue editing. And if you do have any difficulty submitting that report, it's also a good just practice to try checking your internet connection or clearing the cache or history or cookies on your internet browsing that you're using, or sometimes just switching from one browser to another can help solve any kind of issues that you may be having. And Zoom Grants or any other type of website that you may have been jumping to, a lot of pages or in between that has heavy content. So if you do have questions, please reach out to us. Again, Zoom Grants University is help.zoomgrants.com, or you can email us at questions@zoomgrants.com. Or if you just prefer a good old-fashioned phone call, you can also contact us here at this number at the bottom of the training handout that you'll receive, 866-323-5404, extension 2. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has about how to submit invoices and reports in Zoom Grants. Any questions? Okay.
I think you covered it all, Lauren.
Well,
Thank you, Lauren.
I hope thanks to everyone for what you do, and I hope that if you do have any questions, you'll reach out. We love to help our applicants and admins and support the great work that you're doing out there. So please let me know if we can be of help. Otherwise, I'll scoot and let you enjoy the rest of your workshop and content-related questions that I'm sure everyone is really more excited to get to.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you for joining us and explaining the process to all of our subrecipients. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so moving on. We are going to start the rest of our presentation, and we will kick it off with a quick overview of what you will be receiving in the next few weeks. So in the next few weeks, you will be receiving a contract from us, and it's a contract you'll enter into an agreement with us about the use of our CDBG dollars. It's every year you get a contract like this, but we want to make sure that you're aware of some of the things in that contract, specifically the public liability and workers' compensation insurance and the minimum requirements involved with having that insurance. So for example, general liability, there's a $2 million minimum requirement per occurrence. Workers' compensation is also required, and then employees' liability, there's a $1 million limit as well as errors and omissions is $1 million. And that's all explained in the contract. Also, you'll be required to submit a statement of work, which includes the budget, a schedule of the planned services for the fiscal year, and performance measures. That's all included in the Exhibit A. You'll be submitting the Exhibit A along with your signed contract. The contract will require 2 wet signatures, and the contracts are actually ready to go. So what we're doing is we're offering you the option of either picking it up sometime next week between Monday and Thursday if you'd like, or we can mail it out to you and we will use the address in Zoom Grants to mail that contract out to you. But for some agencies who are not too far away from our office, if you'd like to come in and pick up the contract, you're more than welcome to. Just let us know so we can make sure that we are normally at least one of us is here between 8 and 5, but just in case, let us know, hey, I'm on my way, I'm going to pick up a contract. So that way we can make sure that it's ready to go when you arrive. So aside from the contract and the Exhibit A, every quarter you will be required to submit an Exhibit B, and that you will submit through Zoom Grants. And the Exhibit B is basically demographics about the people you are serving. So it'll include their income, what their household income is it 80%, 60%, 30% below the area median income, their race and ethnicity, and how the services that you provided have improved their quality of life. And all of these questions are actually required to be obtained by HUD because we actually have a report on this. So HUD actually specifically has these questions that at the end of the fiscal year, we have to report on it in order to be compliant with HUD's regulations. So please keep that in mind, that anything that we ask of you, while it may seem like a lot of work or it may seem a bit excessive, it's not us, it's HUD. HUD's the one that wants this, and they want this for a good reason. They want to know how their CDBG dollars are spent. They want to be able to have performance measures. They want to be able to have quantitative data that they can report back to the powers that be. So it makes sense that they would like this information, and they rely on us to be able to provide that. So they not only get it from us, but every other jurisdiction that receives CDBG dollars. Then at the end of the fiscal year, when your project or your program is all done and you've expended all of your funding, you will be asked to submit an Exhibit C. And the Exhibit C is basically an Exhibit A. It still requires what you did, when you did it, how you did it, and performance measures. But it's basically just wrapping up what you did. So I always say the Exhibit A is, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. And your Exhibit C is, here's what we did do, and here's how we did it. It's a 2-page document. The Exhibit A and the Exhibit C are 2-page documents. It's not super hard, and chances are you're probably already, you'll probably already have this information because you'll have other grants that you're also reporting to, and also your board. So it's not anything super complicated, but it's something incredibly important that we actually include in our reports to HUD as well. So everything you send us, we report back out. So then now here's the incredibly good part. I think one of the most important parts, at least for most agencies, is how do you get paid? How do you get money, the CDBG money? So we operate on a reimbursement basis, and what you'll do is you'll submit the documents to us saying, here's how we spent the funding, here's documentation proving that we spent the funding, please reimburse us. And you'll fill out a request for payment form. And all of this will be explained to you in the coming minutes by Alicia and Tash. Then we're also going to go over the audit requirements and the amendment clause that is also included in your contract. And the audit requirements just basically state that we at any given time can and have the right to review any of your files pertaining to CDBG and the clients you serve. Of course, we understand there's privacy concerns and limitations, but as much as we can, we would like to be able to ensure that you are also keeping the proper records, because that is also part of our requirements as the grantee, is to make sure that our subrecipients are maintaining the records appropriately and maintaining them for a certain length of time. So we will at some point monitor the agency. Every single one of you on some level will be monitored, and to ensure compliance with HUD. And then the amendment clause. Basically what that means is that we're entering into a contract. We're agreeing on a certain way of the agency using the CDBG dollars that have been allocated. However, we understand things happen, situations change, funding sources change, and you might want to change the way you're using the CDBG dollars slightly. Maybe you wanted to use it for salaries initially, and then you decided you need to use it more for supplies. That all needs to be discussed with us ahead of time and as soon as possible, because we need to go through we have certain processes that we need to go through in order to be able to make that happen. Since we have already told HUD, here's how our agencies are spending the money and here's what they're using the money for, we then have to go back and tell HUD, oh, change of plans, here's why we changed it, and this is what the money's going to be used for now. So just keep that in mind. We will always do our best to try and work with our agencies and make it work for everyone, but just keep that in mind that there's also things that we have to do on our end. So that is a quick overview of the contract and the process, and we'll go a little bit more into detail about all of the exhibits that are mentioned in this slide. And then moving on to capital projects. Now, I know only a handful of you are here because you're receiving capital project funding. Please keep in mind that we will be going over all of this. Everything that's on this slide for capital projects, we will be going over this in a lot more detail when we have our pre-construction meeting with you. And the pre-construction meeting needs to take place before you start work on your project. So obviously the sooner we have a pre-construction meeting, the better, because that means you can start your project sooner. And we'll probably be reaching out to you sometime in July to try and set up these pre-construction meetings. The only reason we may delay the pre-construction meeting slightly is if your agency is not ready to go and you need a little bit more time. But otherwise, we definitely do want to meet with you sooner than later so that you have all of the necessary information you need to proceed, especially to our cities, our city departments who are receiving CDBG funding. We definitely would like to have a pre-construction meeting with you sooner than later, because if you're going to have to go out to bid, you might want to know some of these things ahead of time and also include these in your bid documents. So some of knowing who's receiving funding this upcoming year for capital, this is nothing new, but I definitely want to spend just a couple minutes going over some of the things that you will be expected to make sure that are done when you're using our CDBG dollars. So of course, federal labor standards need to be followed, because this is federal funding, and this includes prevailing wage. So anything that is tied to our CDBG dollars, so every single project that you have that is tied to the CDBG funding it triggers prevailing wage. So there is, except for CAPSLO, Jim, because you're dealing with single family homes and dwellings, prevailing wage doesn't apply. But for everybody else who's receiving capital funding, prevailing wage will apply. That includes certified payroll, getting certified payroll every week, making sure that you're receiving certified payroll with a wet signature. Those are all requirements by the Department of Labor. Section 3. Now, Section 3 is something that we do tell our subrecipients about, and that is triggered when an agency receives over $200,000 for a project. And I'll go into more detail with those agencies that will be affected by this. But basically what it means is that the contractor, if the contractor has to hire people to complete the job associated with the CDBG dollars, the contractor must do everything in its power to hire people from the area and hire people who are 80% or below the area median income. But I'll go more into that when we meet for our pre-construction meeting. Also, the DIR is triggered. So the Department of Industrial Relations number, you'll need a DIR number. And that is not a HUD thing, that is a California thing, because we are doing projects in California. A DIR number is required. I think most contractors know about this. I know all of our departments and our agencies know about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. And again, we can go over it more in our pre-construction meeting. Also, understand that we are going to be going to this construction site where these projects are taking place, and we will be interviewing employees to make sure that the contractor that's executing the project is complying with the federal labor standards, especially paying them prevailing wage and all the fringe benefits that are tied to that. And proper documentation and project files. We will be making sure that you have the proper documentation in your files, because HUD's favorite quote is the file should speak for itself. And so therefore, anybody that is trying to review how CDBG was used in the project should be able to look at that file and know exactly from beginning to end that everything that HUD requires was in fact done. So that is it on my end for capital projects. Again, I'll go over it more in detail when we have our pre-construction meetings. But this is only applies to capital public services. Don't worry about that. It's in that sense, it's much easier for all public services. So you don't have to worry about all this other stuff. And I'm going to pass it on to Alicia, and she's going to go over the exhibits for you.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I just wanted to address there was a question in the chat asking if a digital copy of the contract can also be sent. We can send, if you just want to see the contents, we could send it via email, but we will not be sending digital copies. We'll need original copies of the contract signed. If you would like your contracts to be sent to a different address that's not listed on Zoom Grants, feel free to email me and we can send it out. Say the Santa Barbara office is listed in Zoom Grants, but you want it sent to the local office, you can just email us and let us know where you would like it sent, or you can pick up the contracts. So that's just an option there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll be going over the contract exhibits. As Rosie had mentioned, the statement of work. Well, the exhibit A is what you're going to do. The exhibit B is what you're doing during the fiscal year, and the exhibit C is what you did with the funding. So the exhibit A is submitted as an exhibit with the contract. This is where you'll propose your contract budget. So you'll be listing your line items. If any changes are made to this contract budget, it will need to be submitted to city staff before proceeding. And this statement is a reflection what you'll do throughout the fiscal year. and the numbers that should be reported should be consistent with the city's annual action plan, which has been submitted to HUD. The quarterly reports will be submitted via Zoom grants every quarter. Deadlines are listed in the agency's contract and also in this presentation. The numbers reported in the quarterly reports will just be the new number served for each quarter. Zoom grants will automatically calculate your year-to-date totals, and it will also compare. There'll be a section where we'll enter your goals, and you'll be able to see the progress from each quarter. The summary of accomplishments will be, it can be submitted as an attachment in Zoom grants with your final quarterly report. At the end of each quarterly report, there's a section where you can upload documents. So there's one place where you can upload, or you can attach it with your final invoice. It must be submitted along with your final request for payment, or else the final payment will not be released until the final report is received. Also, the numbers reported in your Exhibit C must match the numbers in your agency's final Exhibit B. These numbers will be reported to HUD and will be compared to the numbers that you first submitted at the beginning of the year with your statement of work. So I'll go through each exhibit here. So the Exhibit A hasn't changed much. We just changed the formatting a bit, and we also added instructions to kind of help guide you and help you understand what type of information we're trying to obtain. So how many people or households will be served? You should report only one. And also this number should reflect the number that was approved for the city's annual action plan. And I provided a link to the action plan, and it's section AP 38. Just if you want to reference that, if for any reason these numbers are incorrect and need to be revised, please let us know as soon as possible. You'll be reporting on just the program, so just ensure that you're reporting the number of people served with the Santa Maria program. Same with the budget. Please make sure you're just reporting on the Santa Maria program. So here, not much has changed since last year, but we did add a bit more of instruction to the budget and also ask that you define the line items that you're requesting. So if you're requesting direct assistance to individuals, please define what exactly you're doing with that funding. Same with salaries. You can say you're providing salaries for 1 or 2 employees. Supplies, what type of supplies are you purchasing? Occupancy and utilities, you can list the utilities, or if you're just paying for rent, you can just list that there. So that's the Exhibit A, and that will be submitted with your contract. Here's an overview of when each quarterly report is due. Every quarterly report is due 30 days after the end of the quarter, with the exception of the 4th quarter, which is due June 15th, 2022. So all final invoices and reports are due by June 15th, 2022. So please plan ahead and just make sure to meet the deadlines. Any late submissions will be reported in the agency's monitoring report. So it's important to make sure you plan ahead and get those reports in. The Exhibit B will be the demographics that will be reported into Zoom grants. So. And with capital projects, they will be submitting a capital quarterly progress report, and I'll go over that in just a few slides. So here are the income limits that the clientele must meet. And then here are the race and ethnicity categories. And this is all information that will be asked in your Exhibit B report. These are the 3 CDBG national objectives. All of the subrecipients fall under the benefits low and moderate income persons as defined by HUD. So that's why we ask for the income, we ask for all the demographics, because we have to show proof that all agencies fall under that category. There's also a presumed benefit category. So if your agency falls, if it serves one specific population, one that's listed in presumed benefit, then there's a certain way that you report your numbers. So just contact us and we'll help you out with that. This is a client intake form. It's required for all public service agencies, and Capsule has its own form, but it has all the same information. This, you can use your own form, but just ensure that it has all of our information, including the income limits. And these do not need to be submitted, but you'll need to make sure that they're kept on file. This is the capital project quarterly progress report, and it's submitted 30 days after each quarter, with the exception of the 4th quarter. This will just be, if you're able to submit an invoice, you'll be required to submit an invoice at this time. If there's no project activity during the reporting period, then you would just check the box in the second section here, and you will just explain why there's no project activity during that time frame. And then I see Jim asked, will you be making up a new client intake form with the current income levels? Yes, we'll send that out for Capsule. And all of these forms will be listed on the city's website as well. So here's the Exhibit C. It looks just like the Exhibit A. It's just what you did during the fiscal year. This is required to be submitted at the end of the fiscal year or when your agency prepares the final request for payment. So once you submit this, you no longer have to submit reports. So say if you fully expend your funding in the 2nd quarter and you submit your Exhibit C, then you don't need to submit an Exhibit B for the 3rd and 4th quarter. So once you submit this report, then you're all done. That's just an overview. Not much different from the Exhibit A. So just a recap of the reporting requirements. The proposed numbers in the Exhibit A statement of work must be realistic and as accurate as possible. We will report these numbers to HUD, so it's very important. You must also have documentation for the numbers that you've served. So proposed numbers in the Exhibit A will be inputted into HUD's reporting system, which is IDIS, and we're requiring unduplicated counts for each quarterly report. And the Exhibit C, as I mentioned, will be a summary of your accomplishments during the year. And HUD greatly emphasizes the importance of meeting or exceeding your agency's proposed goals. So does anyone have any questions for my section before we move on to the payment process? And we're always available to help with any technical questions. So I don't think we have any questions, so I will move on to Tosh, and she'll be going over the request for payment process.
Thank you, Alicia. So we will get started on submitting a request for payment. So that will be done within Zoom Grants. So please make sure to submit that request for payment along with the backup documentation. And then we'll also need the original request for payment form with the wet signature, and that can be mailed or dropped off here at our office. And then we'll go over the summary of expenditures. So this is required to be submitted along with the invoice and with the request for payment form. The template is posted on the city's website, so it can be found there. For time periods of your invoices, please do not overlap the dates. So for example, if your first invoice has dates of July 1st to September 1st, then your second invoice should be dated for sometime after September 1st. So please do not overlap those dates. With the invoices, quarterly submissions are preferred, but they are not required. We just ask that you do not wait until the end of the fiscal year to submit your invoice. This could possibly risk the loss of your allocation, which we don't want that to happen. So it's important to plan ahead to ensure that the agency can expend all of the funds. Um, and next we'll go into the description of items and the CDBG budgeted amount columns. Those should correspond with the line items that were documented in your contract exhibit A. And I believe it was mentioned earlier that your exhibit A cannot be changed without getting the city staff approval. So we want to stick to what you outlined in your exhibit A. So when you submit your invoices, just make sure it matches that. For your request for payments, there is a max of 4 for the fiscal year. And I do want to mention that there is just a minimum of 1. So the agency can request the full allocated amount on just 1 request for payment. So basically you can fully expend your funds at any time during the fiscal year. You don't have to submit more than 1 request for payment. So we'll go on to next up, processing the request for payment. It usually takes about 2 weeks, but that is, if there are no issues. If there are issues, then it can take a little longer. So that's just the expectation of how long it takes for us to make sure that we have what is needed. We'll go on to the next slide. And this here is the request for payment form. So up at the top, if you notice the request for payment number, so this is basically, that's going to be the first request for payment will be 1-2021. So your second will be 2-2021, and then so on. So just make a note of that. And then couple things I want to point out in your description of item right there, that refers back to your exhibit A. So we want to make sure that your invoices are matching the line items from your exhibit A. And so we just want to make sure that those match. And again, those can only be changed with getting the approval from city staff. And then we'll move on to the total bill to date. So this should always equal 0 for your first request for payment. If it's not your first request, then you'll want to make sure to include the amounts that you already had billed to date. So just make sure that that is all correct before submitting. And then the last little column there, the current request for payment, that should be supported with the summary of expenditures, which is required to be submitted along with the invoice as mentioned. And then just make sure that you have the backup documentation to go along with your request. Again, there's a maximum of 4 requests for payments allowed per fiscal year and a minimum of $1,000 per request. And then please always make sure to provide us with the original request for payment with the wet signature. We need that to process. And then we'll go on to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the summary of expenditures. So this is required to be submitted along with your invoice. So the template can be found on the city's website. And this just helps us calculate your invoice totals. And then it also helps us see how, you came up with the total of your invoice. So it helps us make sure our numbers match. And then we'll go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so funds can only be used on a reimbursement basis. Payments are not made until after the approved cost is incurred and paid by the subrecipient. So this is why good record keeping is very important because we need that in order to reimburse the agency. Errors on invoices or missing documentation will delay the reimbursement. So we just ask that you double check that you have all the backup documentation to support your request before it's submitted. And also, if your quarterly reports, the Exhibit B, is not submitted by the deadline, this will delay payments. So there are times that we will have to hold the check until we receive your report. So please get those in on time. And then 10% of the total grant or the final request for payment will be withheld until we receive the Exhibit C, which is the annual report that we require after you expend your funds. And something important to note is that final invoices are due no later than June 15th, 2022. And then we'll go on to the next slide, please. So for salaries, if the agency is going to be billing salaries, we're going to need employee time cards that are signed by the supervisor. And then we'll need to make sure that there are activity timesheets to go along with that. We have to make sure that the activity that took place is CDBG related. And that could include case management, counseling, program administration, and more. And then we'll also need some payroll spreadsheets that include the hourly rate. So these can be like your pay statements or pay stubs. And then for occupancy, if occupancy is being billed, please provide a copy of the lease and please make sure that is current. And then we'll also need proof of payment for that, which can be a copy of the check or a receipt. And then for general purchases and assistance, invoices that include eligible expenses is what we're referring to. So we do not allow equipment. We don't reimburse for that, and that includes electronics, furnishings, and similar items. And then I just wanted to add, if you're unsure if something is eligible for reimbursement, you can always reach out to me or any of us really, and we can check that for you before you include it in your invoice, just to avoid you wasting any time with that. And then for general purchases or assistance, we'll also need proof of payment. So that can be a copy of the check, electronic payment receipts, bank statements, and so on. So the documentation must always speak for itself with that. So we will need that to reimburse. And then for construction contract, if applicable, we will need certified payroll. And next slide, please. So for time and attendance records, we will need the actual work time documented on a timesheet, as mentioned earlier. Please only include hourly wages and salary. Do not add fringe benefits except for capital projects or a prevailing wage. And then description of activity and the service provided is very important. Again, we have to make sure that it's CDBG related activity. And we cannot charge percentage or prorate. So subrecipients can use the template of time and attendance posted on the city's website. And I'm actually gonna, on the next slide, show you what that looks like. So next slide, please. So if the agency is billing salaries, this worksheet here is required. So please include this with your invoice. This, again, the template will be available on the city website. This really helps us make sure that the calculations are correct and we can see just how many hours you're billing for. And it just really helps us out to make sure that everything matches. And then on the next slide, I'm going to show you what an activity timesheet looks like. So we'll also need this as well if you're billing salaries. So please make sure to fill out the entire worksheet here. And please make sure to include the activity, which is off to the left. And then it's also important to ensure the dates of this timesheet match the pay statements you provide and the dates of the invoice. So that is pretty much what I have for my section. Are there any questions about invoicing that I can answer for you? And if there are no questions right now, you can always email me and I'm happy to help you out with any of that. So
I just wanted to add that you don't have to use our form, but if you use your own, just make sure that it includes the same information, such as description of activity, the time periods, name of employee, and that it's signed. But our template is just a guide of what information we need.
thank you, Alicia. So if there are no questions, thank you for your attention, and I will pass it back to Rosie, who will go over the invoicing do's and don'ts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tash. Thank you, Alicia. Okay, so we're about to wrap things up here. Just some final thoughts, some do's and don'ts. Please do plan ahead. Make sure that your invoices are submitted in a timely fashion, as Tash explained. Close out your grant as soon as possible. You do not have to wait till the end of the quarter to submit your request for payment for the entire amount. So like, let's say it's August and you've already expended all of your funding. In July and August, it was busy. You've been able to spend your $15,000 or $20,000 allocation. Feel free to submit your Exhibit B, submit your Exhibit C, and your final request for payment. That's okay. We actually appreciate that and encourage it. One, it'll help you. Two, it'll help us in our reporting to HUD because we'll already have the information early on. And three, you don't have to deal with us for the rest of the fiscal year, which I mean, I know that we're a joy to work with, but I'm sure you don't really want to keep, it's one less thing on your plate because you have plenty of other things to worry about. So we definitely are not one of those jurisdictions that are going to only make you do bill us for 25% of your allocation every quarter for the next 4 quarters. You are more than welcome to spend the funding early on. The sooner the better. As long as you have eligible expenses, as it's okay, as long as it's tied, it's under your budget, please. I know we have several agencies that are joining us that have done this in the past. And if they would like to share their experiences or share with you the positive aspects of it, I encourage them to share that with you. Also, provide clear and backup documentation, as Tash mentioned. The more documentation you provide us, the clearer the documentation, the easier it'll be for us to process your request for payment, the quicker we can process the request for payment, and also the more compliant you'll be with HUD, because ultimately the file should speak for itself. So the clearer your documentation, the better it is overall. Don't wait till the last minute to submit an invoice. That just puts undue stress on everybody. And really, there's no need to do that when you have so much flexibility throughout the fiscal year. And also make sure you're not billing for ineligible expenses. And as Tash mentioned, if you ever have a question about what is eligible, what is not eligible, please feel free to call us. Please do not hesitate to call us. And if there's something that, for example, is not eligible, we'll work with you to figure out what we can consider eligible under your line items, or create a new line item for you so that we can meet your needs, but also meet the needs of HUD. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the audit requirements. If you are an agency that receives more than $750,000 a year, you are required to conduct a single audit, and that single audit copy will come to us. Never had a problem with any agency not complying, so I'm not worried about this one bit. Also, just understand that we will be monitoring you at some point, whether it's a desk monitoring, which means that we will conduct the monitoring via virtually, or whether it's an in-person monitoring. We will be monitoring your agency to ensure compliance per HUD's regulations. Next slide, please. And record keeping. Record keeping is huge. It is, according to HUD, the #1 reason why grantees and subrecipients get in trouble with HUD, because of poor record keeping. Knock on wood, never had an issue. Actually, we have had great praise because of our subrecipients. Our subrecipients have always made us look really, really good. Every time HUD comes and visits us, our HUD representatives are incredibly, they're very happy with us, and they're incredibly impressed by the process and by all the record keeping. So we just want to make sure that we keep it that way. So make sure you keep accurate records. Make sure that anything you send to us, you keep a copy of. Insufficient documentation will likely lead to monitoring findings. We do not want findings. It's not the end of the world, but it's also not the greatest thing. So we definitely do not want to have any findings in our records. And also keep in mind that not having proper documentation not only puts your agency at risk of obtaining future CDBG dollars, but it could potentially put us, the grantee, the city of Santa Maria, at risk of receiving additional CDBG dollars. So it's a big deal to make sure to have proper records and the proper documentation. And also make sure that you retain all CDBG records for a minimum of 5 years from the end of the grant closeout. So what that means is public services, for example, the grant will be closed out June 30th, 2022, which means that you will need to keep all CDBG records tied to that program year until July 1st of 2027. Most agencies in our monitorings, we've learned that most agencies keep their records for well over 5 years. So again, I'm not concerned about it, but it is something that I just want to make sure everybody's aware of. Next slide, please. And timeliness. So another reason why we encourage your agency to submit your request for payments in a timely fashion is not only so that you can get paid, but also so that we can comply with HUD's regulations. So we actually get monitored every year. They run a report on May 1st to make sure that we, the city of Santa Maria, don't have too much money sitting in the bank. And if we have too much HUD money, too much CDBG money sitting in the bank, HUD goes, they're obviously not in need of the funding. They obviously don't need the money because look at all the money just sitting there. They're not spending it. So they will go, well, do they really need the money coming to them in July? You know, it's already May. They still have all this money to spend. They don't really need any more money. We'll hold on. We'll hold off on getting them more money until they spend what they need to spend. We don't want that because we do need the money. We all know our agencies need the money. we don't want to give off the impression that we just have so much money and not enough stuff to use it on. So because we operate on a reimbursement basis, we can't use the money that's sitting in the bank until you use your money and let us know that you need to get reimbursed. So this is why it's so important also to make sure that you submit your request for payments in a timely fashion. And just a few more slides. We're almost through it all. Okay, so this is a screenshot of our special projects webpage, and this is the CDBG section of our special projects section of the City of Santa Maria's website. And this is going to be your go-to. So you need a form, you need additional information, you need links to other subrecipients' websites. Everything is on this one page. So we update this on a regular basis. Anything new pops up, we put it in here. So this is where you're going to find today's training. This is where you're going to find all of the forms that Tash and Alicia went over today. Everything's going to be on here. Currently, you're seeing fiscal year 2020-2021 forms. That's because we're still in that fiscal year and we're still wrapping up that fiscal year. But come July 1st, we will have all the new forms up there. And Alicia will also send you all the new forms via email so you have them ahead of time. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the next two slides are just showing you that there are various videos that will go over different sections of Zoom grants. So there's one video, just like a quick tutorial, quick overview, a quick guide for all applicants on how to use Zoom grants. And then the next slide shows you that there's also a video on invoices and payments. So now what Alicia and Tash have done in this PowerPoint presentation is they have put a hyperlink into the PowerPoint so that you could click on the link and it'll take you straight to these sites. So when Alicia sends out the PowerPoint presentation, you'll have easy access to these two videos. So once again, thank you. I can't say it enough. Thank you for everything you do on a daily basis. Thank you for making us look good. Thank you for using our CDBG dollars and putting them to good use. Just thank you so much. And if you have any questions about this or anything else CDBG related, please feel free to give us a call. Give us a call, send us an email. You know how to reach us. We really want you to feel like you're not in this alone. We're all here to work together, and we appreciate and value the partnership. And we really want to make this CDBG process as easy and painless as possible. So we know that this is one of so many things that you have on your plate, and we definitely don't want to be the big thorn on your side. So thank you so much. Any questions before we close out? 9 minutes before 12. Everyone's like, we've been there, done that. We know what we're doing, right? Great. All right. Well, I'm going to close out the meeting. Thank you so much. And we will see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.